away and we'll bring it back as we go through tonight. You're in the right place. We're going to be talking about pain tonight. So I'm going to bring that flip chart back and forth as we work together tonight. So welcome. As you know, we're here together from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time talking about healing and releasing pain. I'm very excited that you're here. I'm very excited that I get a chance to work with you tonight. And I'm more excited to tell you about how this is truly possible. Pain is one of those things that when we get wrapped into a cycle of pain, it feels like it can take over our life. And when it takes over our life, it feels like we have no life. And it feels like we're constantly trying to chase the pain away. And our whole life feels like it's consumed by the pain. So I'm sure if you're here tonight, that is your experience, or something similar to that is your experience. So my goal tonight is to show you that there is a different way, possibly some may call a better way, but a way that you can unravel this pain to get you into a place that you're feeling better. It is possible to get to a place where your pain does not define your existence. It is possible for you to get to a place where you can breathe and walk and laugh and do things again without being afraid of this pain chasing you. You may be wondering, how do I know that, and who is this woman in my living room right now? So my name is Dr. Divi. I'll spend a little while, just a few minutes actually, telling you a little bit about me and how I stumbled into this work, or more importantly discovered this work, and tell you a little bit about what I teach. Now I will tell you that tonight we're together for an hour, and as you can see from the page that you're looking at right now, as we end up wrapping up, I am going to tell you about how you can take this work further. So we will be talking about that closer to the end, because I do know that in an hour introduction, I can give you a heck of a lot, like so much to work with. The nuts and bolts and the juicy stuff we will talk about later on, and how you can access that and all kinds of good stuff. So my name is Dr. Divi. My training is actually as a family doctor. I became a family doctor about 21, 22 years ago now. I'm class of 93, so 22 years ago. And I was 25 when I graduated medical school. So I was out and excited and working and happy, and I thought I had the world by its tails. I started medical school very young. At the young age of 19 is when I started. And medicine was something I decided I was going to do when I was about 9, 10 years old. So I was very much a beeline type A person, where it was like, boom, I'm going to do this. And I'm going to do it now and get it done and get out there and help a lot of people. That was my intention. And so I got out working, and literally within 3 or 4 years of me working as a physician, I stumbled into chronic pain and chronic health problems myself. Was I surprised? I was completely surprised. I never expected it to happen to me. Because as a physician, and that to a 25-year-old physician, I would sit back and listen to patients come in who were often double my age, tell me their stories, tell me their ailments, and my mind would think, that's too bad that that's happening to you. I'm sorry this is happening to you, but that is not my existence, right? So I had a very different perception of myself, what my life was going to be like. I never thought I would become a patient. So here I go, fast forwarding a couple years, and the next thing I know, I'm in chronic pain. And probably like some of you out there, it started very quietly. It started with a little bit of knee pain, a little bit of hip pain, a little bit of back pain. And the next thing I know, it literally felt like it cascaded, almost like a snowball, into essentially chronic pain. I could not walk from here to where my window is, which is maybe 8 feet away from where I'm standing right now, without holding on to something. I was in that much pain. The pain started in my heels, would go up my legs, into my back, up my neck. I would have chronic headaches. And without belaboring that too much, because I know if you're watching this workshop, either yourself or someone you love or someone you know experiences this. That was my experience, and it was about 2 years that I was into it before I woke up one day and went, holy cow. I had other health issues that I won't go into right now, but pain felt like my biggest thing. And at the worst of my worst, I was popping anywhere from 10 to 15 Advil a day, drinking anywhere from 2 to 4 glasses of wine a night, and self-medicating with things like caffeine and just over-the-counter, whatever I could put my hands on. And this is now about 16, 17 years ago, and this is actually before Aleve came on the market. So my choices were Advil, Tylenol, and it was a very slippery slope as a physician to self-prescribe myself things like Tylenol 3s or oxycodone or Percocet, and that's actually before the days of all kinds of the newer opiates that are out there that a lot of you may be addicted to, like oxycodone. So it was before all of that happened. So I started off with all this pain, and I didn't want it to be my existence. I was 27 at the time, 28 at the time, and I wanted to have kids. I was married. In my own perception of life, I would have told you, the 28-year-old version of me would have told you, I have no stress. That would have been my perception of life. And now, here I was waking up in pain, and if somebody had said to me then, stress causes pain, I would not have known what they were talking about because I did not have that perception. Over the time in my healing, I started to understand that and started to unravel it. And to make a really long story short, I was able to unravel the pain with a combination of things like acupuncture, massage, but predominantly what really helped me incredibly was yoga and meditation. And as some of you know, I actually became quite interested in yoga, and I went off and I studied yoga. And I went and opened a yoga studio in Victoria, and I taught yoga for 8 years, and I was relying on the yoga mat to keep me out of pain. Because after practicing yoga for about 6 months to a year, my pain subsided significantly. But if I had gone 3 days a week, 2 weeks without a yoga class, the pain would come back. So this was a revolution, an evolution that I was in. Then fast forward 8 years of running a yoga studio, my time was done. I was done teaching people how to do the standing splits. And I was done doing them. So we sold the studio, meaning myself and my husband, and I relocated back here to Vancouver. And I now have a child, and at the time my child was 5, and I'm now back on the mainland, and I'm back working as a doctor full-time. I kept up a practice on the island part-time, but I'm back working full-time, and I don't have the time to make a yoga class every day. So that was a real turning point for me to understand more what the yoga was doing to my body so that I could apply it without the yoga class. Got it? And so now what I teach people is how to unravel the pain without the need of rolling out a yoga mat. Now if you have a yoga mat and you get on it regularly, this will accentuate that work even more. But I now have discovered that yes, the yoga mat is great, and yes, meditation is great, and meditation is definitely a part of what I teach people. But I've discovered that it is within us, our capability to release the pain. And now I stand in front of this camera in your lovely living room, standing here telling you when I can get pain, I now use a technique or a tool or a process that I teach. There's many of them that I teach. And I can realign myself and it can shift the pain. And that is huge, coming from a gal who used to pop 15 Advil a day, right? So, and I have taught this work to many, 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 many people. And I'm actually going to share a testimonial with you. I'm not going to share it verbatim, but I'm going to share a testimonial with you before I get into the nuts and bolts. So I have a client who may be watching tonight. If you are, hello. She lives in the greater Vancouver area, and I met her about 2 or 3 years ago out towards Cultus Lake. I was out there with my family, obviously, in the summer, on a hot sunny day at the water park. And my husband and I sometimes bring our dog, and we take turns taking our dog down to the beach, down at Cultus Lake, to have her swim so that my son can play in the water park. And so I took our dog to the beach, and I ran into this woman, and her and I started talking. She has a dog too. And we just started chatting, and then, so what do you do? Those kinds of conversations end up happening. And I told her I teach self-healing. And at the time, this is a few years ago, I was teaching on the side of running a medical practice. And she was like, really? And I said, yeah, I teach self-healing. And she at the time, and still is a Reiki master. And she said, well, that's interesting. And I said, yeah, I'm a medical intuitive too. So she's like, wow, that's interesting. And she said, I've been looking for medical intuitive, and I'm looking to how to heal my body. And I said, oh, what's going on? She said, oh, I've been in chronic pain and I'm sick all the time. So I gave her my card and I said, look at my website, see what you think. And it took her about a year or maybe 6 months, and then she contacted me. And when I started working with her, she was in a cycle of chronic pain. And this is a woman who, if you know Reiki, it's an energy healing technique. She's a Reiki master. That doesn't make her a bad Reiki master or anything like that, but it's to show you that what I teach is different. She, like a lot of people, knows a lot of things, but didn't know this stuff that I teach. So her story was that she was literally in and out of hospital every 2 or 3 days for one test or another test. She was in chronic pain. She had fibromyalgia, chronic headaches, stomach problems. She had a bone tumor. She had digestive problems, and the list goes on and on and on. And she literally was in and out of the hospital every 2 or 3 days. And then she said, you know what, I've done this and I've done it for about 1.5 years and I'm not getting any better. So she decided to try my approach. She saw me for a one-to-one session, and then she came and did a weekend, and then she did some of my programs. And then after really applying it, she now has written in the testimony that she can now say she's pain-free. And that is actually why I do the work I do. Because I do know it's possible. I've done it for myself, and I've helped a lot of other people. So now what I'm going to do is tell you a little bit about how I do what I do, give you an overview of it, and give you just a general idea and go into some nuts and bolts as we go. Got it? Cool. All right. So for this next part, I need to pull my flip chart out, and we will get started. Okay. So whenever I teach a workshop, if you can imagine, I have this much information to give you, and I'm trying to bring it into a package that within an hour you can understand it. So what I usually do is I take this information and I put it into essentially an acronym, and I explain the acronym to you so you can get an idea of what I teach. Now each letter in the acronym, I could take each letter and teach for hours, okay? But this is literally an overview, and we'll talk about some of the letters in the acronym more in detail than others. Cool? Okay. So I need my little flip chart so you can see this. God, I'm so excited you're here. You have no idea. Okay, this is like a passion if you can't already tell. All right, so I'm trained as an MD. I'm also trained as a medical intuitive. And I'll also give you a heads up. I'm actually in the process of opening a Mind, Body, Spirit college, and we'll be opening a physical space in about a month. So I am so excited to present these workshops because this is literally one of the most exciting parts of my life. So the acronym that I'm going to use tonight is called SUNHAT. So sun hat. And I will come back to this through the workshop, but I want you to see it, okay? So S stands for scientific evidence, okay? And we're going to talk about each of these 6 parts. It's actually 5. But we're going to talk about each of these parts, but we're going to emphasize a few of them. We're going to emphasize scientific evidence. U stands for understanding our emotions. I kind of have to put it scrunched in so the camera can pick it up. Understanding our emotions, okay? N stands for neuroplasticity. And we'll spend some time talking about what these words are, what they mean. Some of you out there know what these words mean, and some of you are brand new. H means holding on, sorry, I have doctor scribble, holding on to a belief or a faith, but really believing that this is possible. Again, we will go through this in a little bit more detail. A stands for apply this work, or also called align with this work. So apply and align. This is a big part that's linked in with emotions. Okay? And T is thank yourself. Okay? So again, we're going to go through some of these, and I'll talk about each of them through the course of the next 45 minutes that we have left. Again, sun hat. S for scientific evidence. E for understanding emotions. N for neuroplasticity. H for holding the belief that this is possible for you. A for applying the work and aligning. And you'll know what that means by the end of the workshop. And T is thanking yourself. Okay, so let's put that over here, and I'll pull it out later on if I need to. So the first thing we're going to spend some time talking about is scientific evidence. I do believe actually that this is probably the most important part of tonight's webinar. And let me explain why. One of the reasons that I think talking about the scientific evidence is so important is because when you're in chronic pain, the most logical thing to do is to go see your doctor. It may be to go see the acupuncturist, it may go see the physiotherapist, and often those techniques, whether they be medications or chiropractic adjustment or therapy, often those techniques help temporarily. But our mind is always boggled as to why it never goes away permanently, right? And what I'm here to teach you tonight is there's scientific evidence behind what I teach people and that it is possible. So let's spend the next little bit talking about the scientific evidence behind our body's ability to release pain and become pain-free. So when I went to medical school from the years of 1989 to 93, and then my residency from 93 to 95, back then the thinking of chronic pain was, you got it, there's not much we can do. There wasn't much understanding as to why some people got chronic pain and some people did not. It was just one of those things like it was thought, draw of the cards, bad luck, or whatever. And it was always very fascinating. There was some research done, especially in the 70s, on chronic pain, but there wasn't really anything scientifically that we could say, that's the reason. It was starting, but it really took off in the early 2000s. So chronic pain is something that if your physicians aren't aware of it, or maybe your friends, maybe even your physiotherapist or chiropractor is not aware of it, don't be surprised, because this is relatively recent research. So in 2003, there was a physician by the name of Dr. Eisenberg, and she's actually from UCLA, and she's a neuroscientist, and she has a special interest in chronic pain. She's released a number of studies, and she's looking for the cause of chronic pain. Because essentially what we see clinically is something like this. If I have two people, and they have, say, exactly the same, say, knee pain. Say I have two people and they have exactly the same knee pain. And I MRI it, I X-ray it, I scan it, or say it's back pain, whatever. And let's say the MRIs or the scans are identical, absolutely identical. Clinically, as physicians, we often see that some of those patients are out riding their bike. No problem, a little bit of knee pain, no problem. Then the other person with exactly the same thing on MRI and scans and diagnostics has crippling pain. What is the difference? And this is what this doctor has uncovered. The other thing I want to say before I go further is this work that I'm going to teach you or give you a snapshot of tonight is not just applicable for muscular pain. It's applicable for any pain, whether it be emotional pain, whether it be nerve pain, whether it be degenerative disc pain, whether it be arthritic pain, whether it be pain from a slipped disc. It doesn't matter what the cause of your pain is on an MRI or a CT scan. What this doctor I'm telling you about has discovered is actually that there's another source of the pain than just what we call physical. Got it? Cool. So Dr. Eisenberg discovered in about 2003, and a lot of what I'm about to teach you right now, many of us know intuitively, but we don't understand scientifically. What she discovered is there's actually two causes of the pain. The first cause is what she causes sensory area. What that means is if I take your brain scan, let's just say you've got back pain, and I scan your brain, part of your brain would light up, indicating the area where the back is connected to the brain. Makes sense? That part of the area is the area that's injured, so this part of your brain, called your back, is going to light up. Completely makes sense, right? But what Dr. Eisenberg discovered in about 2003 is there's a second part of your brain that lights up. And this part of the brain, she calls the emotional component of the pain. So again, there's two components of pain. One is the sensory or the actual physical injury, whether it be nerve pain or a twist or arthritis or a fall or a sprain. There's actually that physical sensory pain, correct? But the second part, which determines the difference between these two people, is what she called the emotional part of the pain. And what she discovered, I'm going to actually take this picture out, is that she discovered in her studies, I think you can see this. I'm going to scan this forward. So that this is the brain. It's actually in that area that's lit in red, and it's called the anterior cingulate cortex part of the brain. So if you Google that area, I know you're going, Divi, you don't normally get the scientific, but it's really important for those of you who suffer from chronic pain to understand this piece. So this part of your brain called the anterior cingulate cortex, and if you're new to my workshops, I don't normally get the scientific, but I am tonight. This part of your brain is also lit up for those people who have chronic pain. In this anterior cingulate cortex, in the frontal part of the brain, it fires when you're in chronic pain. And what they've discovered is what causes that part of the brain to fire is emotions, what some people call stress. And those emotions, if you can imagine, they hit that anterior cingulate cortex, and then that part of the brain, we'll call it the ACC to make it simple, fires into the body a biological reaction that constricts everything. It makes it tight, and then the pain heightens. They also discovered that this ACC area, if you looked at the cells of that brain part, it is actually those cells have on the outside the receptors that are covered with endorphin receptors, which explains why medications like morphine, oxycodone work so well, because those medications block the receptors of the ACC, that picture in the brain, they block that. And then people don't get the emotional part of the pain. So, excuse me, I've had a lot of clients who have taken things like, excuse me, things like oxycodone for pain. And what they will tell you is, it dulls the pain, but it doesn't get rid of it at all. Sorry. Those medications will dull the pain, but it does not take it away. It doesn't. Because remember, there's two parts of the brain. But it doesn't enough that the person can function. They can have a life, except for the side effects from the medications, correct? And then they need an upping dose, and then it's a nightmare cycle, as many of you may or may not know. So Dr. Eisenberg's work was very revolutionary, and she's done a lot of studies since then on this scientific evidence. So if I was to summarize the last 8 minutes of what I've talked to you, and maybe you're going to fast forward through that part if you're not a scientific type person, what that science is showing us is what physicians have not known under science, under the science umbrella, that there's a direct link between our emotions and our pain. A direct link. And as I said to you earlier, if I had been told that when I started my journey about 17 years ago, I, in my mind, would not have made that connection. But through my emotional work I've done on myself, I now can make that connection. And now when I teach it to people, it really is almost instant, or like a light bulb, or like a shift that can occur. Will that shift occur overnight? That's completely up to you. And we're going to talk about for the rest of the night some of these other pieces, but it is possible if we can, if this is that part of the brain I was talking about, the ACC, if it keeps getting triggered by these emotions and it's giving a response in the body, if we can shift those emotions, then what Dr. Eisenberg is discovering is that the pain in the body can be dulled or completely gone. Because as some of you know who are out there in chronic pain, you'll see your physicians, you'll see, maybe even see the surgeons, and many times they say, I can help a little bit, but I can't get rid of it. So what I do is I teach people how to get rid of the main cause of the pain, which Dr. Eisenberg has discovered is the ACC, which is causing the emotional firing. Now I can hear some of you at home right now, you're going, well, cut that part of my brain out, right? And in fact, they do that in the States only, but only in very, very severe cases. And my understanding from my reading is that that's still in the testing, so it's not standard of therapy. So, and because it is major surgery, what happens as well if you cut part of your brain out is you also lose and dampen your emotions significantly. So there's been a lot of side effects from that surgery, so I'm not suggesting surgery, because I do know that this other stuff can work really well. And let's go into the next part. So remember I said the first step was S, which was scientific evidence. And we've covered some of the nuts and bolts. And in a lot of the programs I teach, we teach a little bit more about scientific evidence, but that gives you some nuts and bolts when it comes to chronic pain. The next piece I talked about was understanding emotions. That's a big one, isn't it? A lot of us don't know our emotions. In my own family of origin, how I grew up, great family, loving family, warm, supportive in everywhere that you can imagine possible. But the one piece that I didn't grow up with was learning what my emotions were and what they weren't. As many of you probably grew up. In my own family of origin, if I was here, then my emotions were on the back burner. We as a family didn't do emotions, and I'm sure some of you had that, right? I was always told if I was sad or I was anxious, it was mostly sad, just go and work more, because if you work more, the sadness will go away, right? That was the thinking. But my chronic pain was a buildup of emotions that I held in my body, because all those emotions were triggering that ACC area of my body. I had a few physical injuries, nothing major, a few falls here, a little bit of overtraining. I used to race triathlons. But then once those injuries started, the ACC took off, which was that emotional part, and compounded the pain. And it was only until I started working with my emotions that I was able to uncycle from that chronic pain without needing anything outside of me. So a huge part of what I teach people is how to understand their emotions. Okay? And I'll spend a little bit of time here before I keep going, because I've got basically 5 big steps to cover in this short period of time. Emotional work is equal to mental work, and it equals into physical effect, which equals to transformation of your life. So emotional work is really going to help your physical body, but it's going to drastically, dramatically, in such a productive way, affect the rest of your life. I have clients that see me for chronic pain, and I coach them and I help them, and they were blown away how much their relationships shift as well for the better. Does it happen overnight? Theoretically it could, but for most of us, it takes a bit of time. It takes a little bit of understanding, and it takes a little bit of application. So we'll get back into understanding emotions when I talk about applying the work in a minute. The next thing, so it goes S-U-N, the next word that I had up there was neuroplasticity. So let me define neuroplasticity for you and explain how it's part of this releasing the chronic pain. So neuroplasticity is a relatively newer field of science or of medicine, and what they've discovered in neuroplasticity is that your brain can shift its function and its structure. So listen to that again. Neuroplasticity is the study of science that the brain can shift its function and its structure depending on how much we as humans try. Now, if you're old like me, I always joke about that because I so don't think I'm old. I still think I'm 20. So if you're old like me, my growing up, especially medical school, was the brain was fixed. It's a structure and it's fixed and it cannot be changed. Neuroplasticity is discovering is that's just not true. So again, the definition of neuroplasticity, the brain can be shifted, its function and its structure, depending on what we do as humans. So what that means, to make it simple, is that your brain is not hardwired to send you messages to your body. Because when I went to medical school, and probably many of your doctors and your therapists still have this belief system that if your brain is hardwired, that it goes from here to here, there's nothing you can do about it. That was the old teaching. But neuroplasticity is a newer area of science, and they're discovering that with a little bit of work, a little bit of application of what I teach people, then we can actually shift the emotions and form new neural pathways to the body. And that's key to know. You have the ability to change your neural pathways so that part of the brain that I talked about, the ACC, can get different triggers to it so that that ACC can respond differently. Isn't that life-giving? That must be just so exciting to think that you have the ability to change the structure and function of your brain and how it fires. And that's how neuroplasticity comes into this, and that is a big part of what I teach. The next part, which I want to spend a bit of time on, because I actually think it's one of the most important parts, I've actually labeled it as an H. H stands for holding the belief that this is possible. Now, what I often teach people is thoughts become belief systems, and belief systems become our reality. So if we think over and over and over and over again that, this is going to happen to me, then we form a belief system about ourselves, and then we actually live into it. Many of you have heard that concept. So for example, if I think I'm never, ever, ever, ever going to make it in life, what normally happens is that becomes my chronic belief system, and then what happens normally, if I don't change those thoughts or belief systems, is that is what occurs. And you could probably think of friends, family members, acquaintances, ex-lovers, someone that you've run across in your life, that's been their occurrence. So thoughts become belief systems become a reality. So I've got written here on the H part is holding the belief that it's possible. Because for many of you out there, you've got this constant belief or constant thought that this pain I'm stuck with. This is too hard. There's nothing I can do. This is something I've had since I was 20. The longer it's been here, the more I'm stuck. And I'm here to tell you that that's not true. That's not true at all. Okay? Because much of the work I teach, the reason people hang out with me for a few months or longer, years many times, is because it's only when you start to change your belief system and you engage in this work that you actually start to see the result. But many of us don't realize how strong our belief system is that it's not possible. I know for myself, when I was in chronic pain, some of you are out there asking, what kind of pain did you have? Did you have nerve pain, muscular pain, back pain? What did you have? I had it all. I had what felt like a compressed disc in my back, like I said, I never went to see a doctor for it. I had muscular fascial pain through my body, and it hurt all the time. And for sure, I could have gotten x-rays and CTs, and in fact, I did do some x-rays through a chiropractor who had me convinced that my neck, if you x-ray it, some of my discs, at least he showed me in the x-ray, because I can read an x-ray, are compressing. And this is, like I said, about 17, 18 years ago. And one of my symptoms was chronic headaches. I had pain up in this upper shoulder area. So she put up the x-rays of mine, and they put up the x-ray of an average, however old I was, 27, 28 at the time, of an average 28-year-old. And he showed me on the x-ray, Divvy, your vertebrae are like this. See all that white stuff that's kind of occluding the area and there's no space? This is a normal x-ray. You have no space, so your discs are compressed. So that's why you have your pain. And I listened to him and I respected what he had to say. And he basically told me that the only way out of my pain was to see him regularly and to see the acupuncturist regularly. And I wasn't against what he had to say, but there was something inside of me that did not want to believe that I had to live in pain, even if my neck showed them the x-ray. And that's what I'm talking about. One of the reasons that I didn't go down the path like some of you may have gone down, where my thoughts became my belief systems became my reality, that I was stuck with this neck x-ray, is because in me, as a physician, I was working for about 3 or 4 years at the time, as a doctor and who had studied medicine for a number of years prior, I had seen on x-ray patients coming in with an x-ray that looked like a whiteout, and they had no symptoms. And I had seen other patients with x-rays that were like, yeah, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and they had horrible symptoms. So I knew that there wasn't necessarily a correlation between how bad my x-ray was and my symptoms were. I knew that instinctively, and I knew that because I had seen enough patients at the time. I'd been working as a doctor long enough, and I was working full time, that I knew that those x-rays did not have to correlate to a lot of pain. So I decided to try a different belief system. So one of the reasons I have written in here, holding a belief system that could be different, is because it's a huge thing. Got it? Okay. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to mention A, the next A. I know you can't see this, but I'm seeing it. I hope you wrote it down. If not, you can rewind it. So to remind you, it went sun hat. I know you can't see it. S was scientific evidence. We talked about that. E is understanding emotions. I spent a little bit of time on that. Neuroplasticity, spent a little bit of time on. Holding a belief system, spent a bit more time on. Applying this work and aligning. Now that is literally the key of what I teach. I'm going to describe it briefly, and then together as a group, we're going to hop into a brief meditation just so you at home, because I know some of you have never meditated, so you can have that experience. So what A stands for, applying the work and aligning. What that means is when people start working with me, if this is that part of the brain, get the sheet out again. This is that part of the brain, the ACC that I've told you about, that when emotions go there, it triggers the pain. That's the thought to be the root cause of chronic pain. The work I teach people is how to shift those emotions that trigger, right? And that's why I said it's linked to understanding emotions. Because if you grew up like me where I was here and my emotions were here, it takes a while first to get to know your emotions, number one, right? Am I happy? Am I angry? Am I sad? Am I scared? Am I vengeful? Am I rageful? What am I feeling now, right? What do emotions mean? So first step is to figure out what your emotions are. Then second step is learning how to shift the emotions. So instead of firing into fear or anger all the time, how to shift it. One thing I want to say very clearly right now, it's not about ignoring your emotions at all. That's not what I teach people at all. God, if that's what I taught, I think I'd be crazy. In fact, I give a very different definition to emotions that I don't have time to do tonight because I want to really emphasize the scientific evidence. But when you do start working with me, we're going to dive into emotions more, what they mean from a mental, emotional, and very importantly, spiritual angle. And I may have a bit of time to talk about that in a little bit here, but I'm getting the guidance to teach a meditation, and then we'll meet back together. Got it? So one of the key things, again, is applying this work and learning how to align our emotions differently. So what that means if somebody calls and you're frantically scared, and that's kind of your knee-jerk reaction, I'm going to be scared, oh my God. Even when that person calls, maybe I'll be knee-jerk scared, but can I form new neural pathways to respond differently? And that's what I teach. And in order to teach this work, there's a strong emphasis on a spiritual angle, which sometimes I talk about in my introduction, sometimes I don't. But tonight what I'm going to do is we'll spend the next 5 or 6 minutes going into meditation, and then we'll meet back up in a second. Cool? Okay. So let me put some music on. Close your eyes. Get comfortable into your chair. And just start to breathe. In and out. Breathing in and breathing out. So that your belly rises and your belly falls. Let's just get some meditation music on. Just bear with me for a second. Maybe you'll be able to hear that. Inhaling and exhaling. Breathe in. Breathe out. Belly rises and belly falls. Take a slow breath in and a deep breath out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Feel yourself melt into your chair as you breathe. Let your body soften. Let it relax. And let your breath move you. So inhale and exhale. If you're newer to meditation, I invite you to put your right hand on your belly button and your left hand on your chest wall. And notice, as an observer would, which hand is moving more. Just to observe and breathe. In and out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Think deeply about your hand that's sitting on your belly button. And try with your mind's intention to breathe into that hand so that your belly lifts and falls with ease. Deep breath in, slow breath out. Deep breath in, slow breath out. Deep breath in, slow breath out. Now together as a group, let's exhale together. And then inhale for the count of 1, 2, 3, 4. And exhale for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale for 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Keep this breath slow. Keep it rhythmic. And keep it flowing. If your mind is scattered and wandering, don't worry about it. Don't fight it. Don't resist it. Just notice it. And as you get more comfortable with meditation, what will start to happen is you will start to notice the mind wanting to do that. And then what will happen is you will get more comfortable with bringing the mind back into the moment. So again, breath in, breath out. Low, slow flow of breath. Just focusing the attention on this moment now is why we practice meditation. Knowing that it's a human thing for the mind to wander, to run away, to even be scared. Because for some of you, it's a brand new thing. As you just focus on that thing that you were born with, called your breath, and you let it slow down, and let your body get easy. With each breath, your body softens and relaxes. Slow breath in and deep breath out. Slow breath in and deep breath out. Breath in, breath out. Now if you have your hands on your belly, just try to relax them next to you. And try to create the same sensations of the belly rising and falling with that low, slow flow that we just did. See what happens. Check in before we come out of the meditation how you're feeling. How do you feel right now? Even a glimmer, do you feel a tiny bit calmer? Maybe the mind has slowed down even a nanosecond? Keeping your eyes closed, just notice how you feel. Good. And then when you are ready, without rushing things, I invite you to wiggle your fingers and your toes. And I invite you to slowly and mindfully open your eyelids, knowing that it's brighter where you're sitting. Welcome back. So for many people who are out there tonight, watching live or watching the replay, meditation for many of us is a newer thing. It was, even though I grew up with it as a technique, I resisted it like the plague, as we do resist what our parents teach us, right? And I came full circle and got interested in meditation as a result of practicing yoga. What meditation actually does is it trains our minds to be more in the moment now. Because if you are right here in this moment right now, right now, and right now, and right now, and right now, then what happens to your mind and your body is there's essentially a greater place of ease that starts to happen. Our emotions start to settle. We start to feel easier. We start to feel calmer. And some of you who have just done that, we did about a 6-minute meditation, may notice that you feel calmer. You may notice a little bit easier. You may notice that your muscles relax a little bit more. And maybe you notice none of that. Maybe you're more charged up or wired or anxious. It doesn't matter. One thing I really teach people in this part that I've written about aligning and doing this work is that you never can do this wrong. It's only the human mind that says you're doing it wrong. All right? So when you start to recognize that you just do what you can do in any meditation, like it's the first time you've ever meditated, then what happens is you let go of a result or let go of an effect or a complex. So meditation is a big part of what I teach people, definitely not the only part. But one of the reasons I teach it as much as I do is because if this is the trigger that triggers us, say this is a trigger that causes us to feel guilty or angry or sad or resentful, and some of you out there are thinking, yeah, my kids. Others of you are going, yeah, that person I call my husband. I got one of those and I got one of those. So this is your trigger. Your husband, your kid, your job, your work, whatever. According to what I shared with you on the scientific evidence, let's say this trigger happens in your life and this person, your husband or your kid, walk in and it triggers the emotional reaction of sadness, anger, fear, resentment, orneriness, or whatever. Well, that emotion has to do something. That emotion goes into the body, triggers that part of the brain that I just showed you, and stimulates a biological reaction in you that causes chronic pain. And most of you, some of you, may notice the emotion that results in the pain, and some of you don't. One of the emotions that gets stuck in my body, if I'm afraid, or if I think I'm not good enough, or if I feel overwhelmed, then I will get tightness in my body. But what I know now that I didn't know years ago is I know how to shift it. And that's what I'm talking about, applying this work and aligning. Because what meditation does is if this is the event, the husband, the kid, or whatever, what happens for most humans, this is the response, the guilt, the anger, the sadness, the resentment, that emotion that whoo, takes off in your body, right? What happens for most humans is there's no gap. Event, response. What meditation does, and also very importantly, some of the techniques, in fact, a lot of the techniques I teach people, is how to increase the gap. The client I spoke about, who I met at Cultus Lake, she was a master meditator. She knew how to do the gap, but she didn't know what else. That's why I tell people that what I teach comes in layers. That's why I try to summarize it into 5 or 6 steps. Because it's something that takes us a process and time to learn. Because when we start to understand we're not our emotions, and we start to have a greater understanding of what our emotions truly are, and we start to work with our mind, we start to work with our focus, we start to work with the power of who we are as humans, then we actually start to create a gap. What most people find hard to believe in this work is it can be that simple. And I have no other way to say to you than, yes, it is that simple, But it comes kind of in many stages. I have a lot of clients I work with. The first stage is understanding these principles, understanding them conceptually and going, okay, I get that principle, I get that principle. I work with a lot of principles. I work with mindfulness. I'll just give you a few examples of what I work with. I work with mindfulness. I work with meditation. I work with the laws of receptivity, the laws of physics, the law of attraction, the law of momentum. You name it, I work with it. I work with all of these universal energetic laws, and I apply them to the body. I teach you how to be in receptivity to the body and the life that you're meant to have. So everything I teach is scientifically proven. Everything I teach has scientific evidence behind it. Because when we learn how to not just create the gap between the event and the response, and therefore shift the response and shift our emotional way of being, then the body releases. And that's the story I was telling you about, that specific client who gave me that testimonial. I literally tear up every time I read that testimonial. Because when I met her, she was in and out of hospital every 2 to 3 days. She was my old-fashioned patient. Just a classic patient I worked with for years. That was her. And to give her the gift of teaching her all of these laws and things that I've briefly talked about, to teaching her how to do this and teaching her that it can be done, and then more importantly teaching her how to apply it, that is life-giving as a teacher and life-giving as a human. So now I want to talk to you about how you can take this work further. I hope that gives you a decent overview. I do want to add one more thing before I talk about some of the things that you can do after this webinar. I wrote at the end of the sun hat, it ends with a T, which is thank you. The thank you is what you will do for yourself. So again, we talked about scientific evidence, understanding emotions, neuroplasticity, holding the belief that this is possible, applying this work and aligning, and the biggest is thanking you. Now, I'm not saying thanking me, I'm saying thanking yourself. Because one of the greatest gifts that we can give ourselves is ourselves. A truly happy, healthy, emotionally sound, emotionally stable, emotionally feeling better, emotionally more joyful person. So I invite you right now to close your eyes for a minute, unless you're driving or out walking on Robson. So close your eyes. So I'm sure some of you might be doing. And first I'd like you to take a second and take a few breaths and ask yourself, what would my life be like with less pain? Keep your eyes closed. What would my life be like if I felt emotionally better? Take a few breaths. What would my life be like if I got to know what my emotions are? What's possible for me? What doors in my life could open? Keep breathing, keeping your eyes closed. Could I ever imagine that I could be pain-free? That I could get to a point where I didn't need to pop so many Tylenol, didn't need to see my massage therapist and acupuncturist every 3 days, where I could get to a point where I had a greater relationship with myself and this did not rule my life? Could you imagine that that's possible? And with your eyes closed, ask yourself a question. What is that worth? What is that worth to get through your day without pain? What is that worth to wake up and not feel your body crunch in? What is that worth to be able to go dancing or playing golf with your partner? What is that worth? Just take a few breaths as you breathe into that. Excellent. And now before you open your eyes, I want you to ask yourself a question, sorry. Do you believe it's possible? Do you believe that as you get to know yourself better, you can make the line between emotional wellness into physical wellness? Do you believe that that can be your experience? I met this crazy doctor online today. She showed up in my living room and And she was telling me how she got herself pain-free. And with your eyes closed, I want you to ask yourself, do you think that's possible for you? And I, Dr. Divi, am standing here as a stand for you saying, yes, it is. It is. I so believe that we aren't meant to be on the planet to have horrible existences. I believe that we're not here to live in chronic pain. I believe that we're here to live a life that is free and abundant and full of love and joy. That's what I truly believe to my heart, to the depths of my heart. So, is that possible? Do you believe it's possible? Tonight I shared one testimony with you. I could have spent the entire hour sharing testimonials with you. I've got that many clients who have done this work, just around pain. So now take a few more breaths, and then gently open up your eyes. So if you haven't done so already, I'm going to invite you to scroll down to the middle of your screen.